Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Hi, I'm Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope. So, I want to set the record straight and explain to you why I put out podcasts specifically about the actions regarding Queensland Police and some of the shootings that we've had recently or over the last couple of years. And some people seem to be under the impression that I might be attacking individual police officers or that I don't understand the pressures that police are under. So I'll just remind for anyone that doesn't know, I was a part of the Queensland Police Service for just under 12 years. And I had performed the last 6 years or so as a physical surveillance officer seconded to the Crime and Corruption Commission. So still a police officer, but working in a covert, quasi covert physical surveillance area. We dealt with, they still deal with major crime, organized crime, corruption, obviously, uh, political corruption, police corruption, investigating that. So I was in physical surveillance for 6 years, over 6 years. Uh, so I just wanted to tell you, and before that, I was in general duties. So I just want to tell you, I do understand the pressures that police are under, and I was in a lot of high risk situations myself. So just to let you know where I'm coming from. So when I'm talking about these shootings that have happened, the perspective I'm coming from is not to attack individual police. My thought on this is that we need to start shining a light on why Queensland has had so many incidents over the last couple of years where Queensland police have felt the need to pull their firearm out and use their firearm on members of the public. And what and I've brought this up before in previous podcasts. The Victorian police years ago had the highest amounts of shootings, police shooting public members of the public. They had the highest amount in the country, and it took them. Well, it took them. They had to find the ability to look within, to look at how their organization was going. Every case they could justify every case, but when you looked at everything from a whole, they had to admit, well, hey, maybe we have a problem here because we have got more shootings than anyone else. Maybe there's something that we can change. And this is what I'm saying when it comes to Queensland Police. You, our statistics are so much higher than the rest of the country now. Queensland Police need to look, the hierarchy, the leadership, the senior leadership team need to be looking at how they can change that. And they need to have a proper look, a proper self examination and say, there's something that we need to change. So I'm going to talk about a few different articles and also what I noticed and what I think part of the cause is, or why part of the reason why we have such high shooting rates now. So I'll go through a few different articles with you. So first off, this was an article that came out years ago, and it was talking about Queensland police shootings. I'm going to take it from about halfway down. So it says that in Queensland, police shot 14 people compared to 8 in New South Wales and 1 in Victoria. Across Australia, around 1/3 of those shot by police survived. This was written, I think, 2021. Terry O'Gorman, he has said that we're not attacking individual police. We're not attacking the police as a whole, but any large organization that is armed and kills people, whether justified circumstance, certain cases or not, must bear scrutiny. And that's what I'm saying. You need to bear scrutiny. We need to scrutinize Queensland Police Service as a whole. The Civil Liberties Council is calling for a review into what are the underlying causes of these police shootings. John Sylvester, senior crime reporter from The Age, says back in Victoria in the 80s, that's what I was talking about, Victoria was shooting more citizens than the rest of the country combined. Stephanie Zillman, veteran Melbourne crime journalist at the Age, and John Sylvester has reported extensively on Victoria's police's reckoning with firearms, where there's been just one non-fatal shooting in the past 2 years. John Silver said that police are trained now, and it doesn't always work, but to keep a distance, protect themselves, and not be put in that situation. Which I'm sorry to say, but there's been a couple of circumstances that I've seen here in Queensland. Just going by what's written in the paper, you say, well, why did you put yourself in that situation? To the police officer, how did you allow yourself to get into that situation? What were you doing? Why didn't you think, well, we can back away? We can do a retreat, pull out of the area and give the person some space. Why do we feel the need that no, not just pull our firearm, but use our firearm? Anyway, continues on, says, but I can tell you that every night somewhere in Australia, there is an event where police would be justified in using fatal force and don't. They go on to say, Professor Jude McCullough from Monash says it's clear that retraining and a shift in culture can really make a difference. But I think, too, also need police accountability. And one thing that happened in Victoria is the series of coronial inquests didn't just look at individual shootings in isolation. They looked at the pattern of shootings over a number of years. And like I said, this is what I'm saying we should be calling for here in Queensland, because the statistics are just way too high. So I'll just bring up this report, and I've spoken about it before a number of times, brought it. So this is just an ABC report showing, hey, this is the statistics over 2022, 2023. Data shows Queensland Police shot more people last year. This came out in 23 last year than police in the rest of Australia combined. Okay, so when you look at this map here, it shows Queensland Police in 2022 to 2023, 14 people fatally shot. 14 in Queensland alone. New South Wales is the highest populated state. They shot 8. Victoria 1, South Australia 1, Western Australia 2, NT at that time was none, and Tasmania was none. And this is what I'm saying. You can't have this amount of people getting shot in one state and continue to say, well, no, we don't have to look at it. We can just brush it aside. And what I saw when I was at Queensland Police, especially when I was working within at the Crime Corruption Commission, the jobs that we were doing, especially when we were doing corruption jobs, and we were looking at other police officers, and some of it I can't really mention specifics cases legally. I don't believe I can, but there were officers that we were investigating, and I was looking at background information that we were given, that you're given about these officers and how it came about that they're getting investigated. And one question that kept popping up in my mind, and I would ask other officers, is how did this person make it through into recruitment in the first place? Because when you look at their background, surely human resources would have checked and seen, well, hey, this is an issue. You've got this in your background. You need to answer some questions. You need to explain what this is about. Because I know the questioning and the things that I had to answer when I was going through, when I was getting vetted, I thought, wow, they really want to delve into everything that you've been through, and you're like including your driving record and that. It needed to be a fairly good driving record. Nothing serious, absolutely no criminal record. You didn't want to have any interaction like friends who were criminals and this kind of thing, associates. And yet that's not what I was seeing when we were investigating these younger officers coming up who were involved in some pretty heavy things, to be honest. And you're looking, going, well, how did you make it through the process in the first time? And this is when I started to question, what's going on here? Why have we got so many police being investigated? Why are we looking at all this? Like it seemed like for a while there, that's all we were doing for a short while, investigating police all around. They'd all been in the job for a certain amount, like a similar amount of time. They all had questionable histories. you sit there going, well, why wasn't this picked up? What's going on? There's got to be a reason. And I started to question, well, have we lowered our standards? As in we, as in Queensland Police Service, have they lowered their standards in order to get recruits or a certain type of recruit? Is this what's happening? And then while I was still at the Crime and Corruption Commission, I remember the report had come out about gender discrimination within Queensland Police. So this article here, Queensland Police employees stood down after watchdog finds gender discrimination in recruitment process. And I remember I knew some young fellas who I thought in my mind they'd make great police officers and they'd applied. And yet I couldn't work out why they had been rejected. And they had all been rejected right around the same time that this is all going on. So a damning report has found at least 200 men who were more qualified than their female counterparts were blocked from entering the police force because of their gender. So this came out in 2021, early May of 2021. Queensland Police engaged in discriminatory recruitment practices in an attempt to achieve a 50% female recruitment target over 3 years, a damning report by the state's corruption watchdog has found. As a result, about 200 male applicants more qualified than their female counterparts were blocked from graduating to the Queensland Police Service, the report says. 3 people from the service have been stood down after the Crime and Corruption Commission said an investigation had revealed ample evidence to support the conclusion that during December 2015 to October 2018, different standards were applied to female and male applicants. Females were selected in preference to male applicants who had performed to a higher standard across entry assessments. That is pretty damning. Around 2,000 male applicants were subject to discriminatory assessment practices, which prevented them from progressing through the recruitment process over an 18-month period from July 2016 to the end of 2017. And this is what I was noticing. This started to make more sense to me. I thought, well, we're getting more issues with these younger police because we've lowered the standards. And okay, you can say, well, we've lowered the standards and we've brought more females in, but the problem is we've also captured these males as well who shouldn't have been on the job, who shouldn't have been accepted as police officers, but because of the lower standards, well, they've just been brought in as well. And this isn't anything against female police officers. I think some of the best officers I worked with were female. And I remember after this report came out, a female officer I worked with, she was so frustrated because she said she had gotten in just before all this had come into play, and she said, the standards were high, and she pushed herself to make sure she would meet those standards, those physical standards. And she couldn't do it at the start, but she pushed herself and exercised and made sure she was going to meet those standards. And she did. And then later on, when she noticed that all these standards had started to drop, she's like, well, why? Why am I pushing myself? Why am I making the effort to be the best police officer that I can be? And yet others are just able to cruise on by. And she made a great statement, which always stayed with me. She said, what the government, what Queensland Police Service have done, they have, instead of advertising to get the best female police officers they can, and advertising to get the best and the brightest females within the community to come and join the Queensland Police Service, they've just advertised to get the lowest common denominator, to just get the numbers. Forget that they can get the best quality. They just wanted quantity. And when you lower your standards and you're just looking for quantity over quality, you're going to reap the repercussions down the track, down the road. And this is why I believe we are now reaping what we have sown, what Queensland Police Service, what the hierarchy, what the leadership team have been sowing for the last decade. They've gone through the lowest common denominator. They've been recruiting below standards, below standard police officers. And now we have people in there who can't handle the stress. This is just my opinion, okay? There's a great possibility that they can't handle the stress. We have, instead of females that will push themselves and stay physically fit and be able to handle the stressful situations, we have, it seems to me, we've got a lot of extremely small female police officers. And I'm sorry to say, what if they're under threat? They're not gonna feel like, oh well, I can take this person on hand to hand, or I can use this. It's like, well, crikey, I'm gonna have to go for, the strongest weapon that I can possibly use here. If you don't, if you're not hiring people, not recruiting people who can hold themselves physically and who are easily intimidated, you're not going to get good results. But this is what I was seeing. This is why I was thinking, well, we need to change something. Something else has to happen here. This is going to end badly for the Queensland Police Service if we don't change, if they don't look at it and say, we need to change. They need to change their actions. Now, and this was something that was, so this was helping form my opinion, and like I said, why I look at so many of these shootings, and I am so critical about what goes on. Now, another article, just to show, I'll bring up another article that I wanted to share, and another two that I'm going to talk about. This was what's happened with the Queensland Police whistleblower. She went public to argue that Commissioner Katarina Carroll, our former commissioner, should lose her job. I've been saying that for ages. So Kate Porcina bared her soul by revealing the harassment and bullying she suffered to the inquiry into QPS. She wants to see change. The final report of the inquiry into the QPS is scattered with stories, but not names of people like former Detective Senior Sergeant Kate Porcina. I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right, Kate. Porcina spent 23 years in the QPS. She was the principal investigator and found critical new evidence for the inquest that decades later overturned findings about the 1991 deaths of North Queensland friends Julianne Leahy and Vicky Arnold. She is also the whistleblowing officer behind a submission to the Queensland inquiry into police responses to domestic and family violence, detailed by The Guardian. This has outlined the horrific scope of sexual harassment and misogyny in the workplace, raised alarms that alleged police officers to uh, adequately investigate the deaths of First Nations women, and detail the way police failed to pursue credible domestic violence allegations against officers. Pasina said a senior officer sent a photograph of her cleavage, cropped from a photograph taken at a past International Women's Day conference, to other commissioned officers, not junior, commissioned officers. Another commissioned officer made a revolting, slimy sexual joke. She said she went to 4 separate assistant commissioners over a period of 4 years, and no one did anything to stop the bullying. Like I said, this is why the leadership need to take a good hard look. These things still haven't been resolved. Now, when I was first stood down, I was stood down because I refused the vaccine mandates. I didn't think they were legal. I didn't think this was a lawful thing. You cannot lawfully make people undergo a medical procedure. And fine, years later, it was proven in court. Yes, this was an unlawful direction. I believe it was in the Queensland courts. By then, I've already been stood down. By then, so many good officers had pulled the pin on the job and thought, well, you know what, this is just too hard. We're treated like utter rubbish, utter rubbish, and this is the way. And yet, young officers who were doing things wrong, they got the jab. Well, we can overlook other things that they were doing, and this isn't just bitter grapes, sour grapes from my behalf. I brought up when I had my interview. I was being investigated, about why I'd made the decision. They were trying to label me as a kind of conspiracy kook, and I said to them, I brought up this case here, and I said to them, this had just happened. And I brought this up. I said, I'll read this to you. Triple C loses bid to sack police officer for misconduct. So, the Queensland Civil and Administration Tribunal, QCAT, in a recently published decision, revealed Constable Kai Stephen Waller was the subject of disciplinary action by Queensland Police Service Acting Deputy Commissioner Tony Wright. So, QCAT member Paul Konowski, he said the officer was disciplined in relation to improper conduct while he was constable stationed at Roma in Queensland, west of Brisbane. The disciplinary action included a reduction in salary, a transfer to Ipswich, a requirement to participate in a first-year constable program, and to report to the Assistant Commissioner of the Ipswich region to discuss the QPS's expectations of its sworn officers. So this is what he had done. So first, he provided access to his Q Light, which is basically like it's a little tablet, and you can access all this information on there. It's so you can do things remotely, to other police at Roma without authorization. So yeah, it's an iPad used to access confidential databases such as the police database. Second is the second to fourth particulars involved an incident that happened late one night shortly before Christmas in 2016. Constable Waller was on solo patrol in performing his official duties. Waller used a police vehicle to transport members of the public for an unauthorized purpose, involved giving a woman identified only as NFT and a male companion a lift to their homes. While still on duty, Constable Waller engaged in sexual intercourse with NFT. This occurred after he dropped the male companion home and then drove NFT to her home. The sex occurred on a veranda of NFT's home. So you imagine this. I'm not trying to imagine too hard, but if he's just a junior constable, so he's in uniform. He's got his gun, he's got his belt on with all his accoutrements on him. He's having sex on the veranda. You know, let's be real. Let's talk real. You have to drop your trousers. You have to drop your accoutrement belt. Your gun is laying on the floor, on the ground. Who's looking after it? No one's looking after these weapons. You've got your gun, your ammunition, your taser, your OC spray, your handcuffs, your baton. These are all weapons. He's just got them laying there while he has sex. So it's occurred on there. Waller failed to adequately secure his service firearm and accoutrements while on duty. Before having sex with NFT, he removed his trousers and his utility belt, which held his firearm, ammunition, and taser, and left them nearby. The tribunal was told on 18th of March 2017 he failed to compel NFT. So this is a while later, okay? NFT to supply a breath sample while performing random breath testing duties. The Triple C. So he's come along. He's doing random breath testing. She's driven along. I believe what's happened. She said, "Hey, she's had a few. She's put a few on. She's going around to pick up the kids." So instead of breath testing her or telling, yeah, he's just let her go through. Said, "I won't breath test you." If she's over and she has an accident, he's putting the life of these children that she's going to pick up in danger. Anyway, the Triple C submitted that Constable Waller should be dismissed from the QPS. It also submitted the misconduct was not a single isolated act. However, the investigatory and disciplinary process itself has had a salutary effect. The sanction involves guidance and supervision. It is sufficient to maintain public and collegial confidence in the police service because it shows that serious lapses from required standards will have significant consequences. The correct and preferable decision on sanction is the decision that was made by the acting deputy. Accordingly, I'll confirm that decision. The Triple C wanted him fired. They said, no, he's got all this other things going on. That's all good. He got disciplined. That's all we need. And my argument to the officers who are investigating me because I didn't take a needle, and well, I had a union rep with me as well, and I kind of wanted him to hear what I had to say, was that the union got up and the police service, they were all behind. This is the officer they wanted. The Triple C said, hey, this fella needs to lose his job. This is serious misconduct. But the union, they got in behind him and said, no. He can be disciplined. We can We can help him. You know, he needs to keep his job. They fought hard for him to keep his job. When I and a lot of other police officers did not want to take that needle, did not want to be subjected to a medical procedure, an illegal medical procedure, we were just completely thrown under the bus, in my opinion. Completely thrown under the bus. There was, by the union and by other officers, by the Queensland Police Service as a whole, completely thrown under the bus. And I said to them, if that's the kind of officer you want, someone who does all of those things, and you will fight hard for him to keep his job, if you want him, and I guarantee you, he stepped up and took the needle. You want him, but you don't want me? You want to drop your standards and take all these women, but you don't want all those other more qualified men? Well, then you've got a problem. If we keep dropping our standards, we keep lowering our standards, we are going to have a problem. And this is why I talk so much. This is why I want to shine light so much on what is happening with Queensland Police and these shootings. I'm not out to attack individual police. But if the Queensland Police Service has allowed people in who are of a lower standard, who cannot handle the pressures of policing, we are going to have these incidents more and more. And that's what I believe we are seeing. That's why I talk about it so much. I hope that answers a few questions of why I do this, why I talk about it so much. Anyway, my name is Jay Fallon. I'm a former police officer with the Queensland Police Service. Thank you for listening to The Slippery Slope.
And say it isn't real, and please don't go away. Just give me one more day. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. We could start again. We could start again. We could start again.